In this lesson, I want to cover off how we can actually work with the values. So in the previous lesson, I showed you how we can set up an array, how we can set up an object, how we can return back those values that are contained within here. But within JavaScript, most of the time when we're creating dynamic JavaScript, the whole idea is that these values will be fluctuating. They're going to be changing dynamically as our code executes out. So the idea here is that we need to have a way to access, update that information, and be able to output it as needed. So let's take our object and let's add in another brand new object. And this is really easily done because we've already declared the object. So now we can do something like b dot, and here we can come up with FOU for the fourth item within the object, and all I have to do is assign a value. So maybe I'll just do hello world here. And I could do b dot FIV, or to change it up a little bit. So do you think that this is going to work the same way? So if I do FIV and if I equal it to 5, all caps there. So let's take a look and see what gets output within the console now. So refreshing it, and we see that now within the console we've successfully added items into that object. And we can make some calculations and treat them just as we would any other variable. So we had our 4, we have our 5, and so on. So hello world and 5. So that's all sitting in there, and now we have access, just like we do the same way we're accessing the values down here, we can access and interact with them. So we don't actually have to declare any other VARs because we've already got B as a container for all of this information. And similarly, if we want to update the value of b.sec1, then we could update that value. So maybe I can do updated. And we do have an option to use single quotes, double quotes. So I'm just giving you a sampling here of just different variations of how to write out the code. So let's go back into the browser, refresh it, and now we see that we've got the new value. So we've got that updated value because we did update it within this line, and JavaScript is just rendering out sequentially. So A, B, 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 and then it renders it out the console log. And one of the things to keep in mind with JavaScript, I know I said it renders it out sequentially, but it actually does 2 passes through the script. So it does an initial one to see all of these variables and all of these values, and then the next one it actually places those values in. So we'll do a quick run through and see which variables are declared, and that's how whenever we declare a value, we know that JavaScript will treat it as already being declared because it does do those 2 passes. But for now, just think of it as running through and reading the code from top down and executing the code out. So now let's look at the arrays. So the arrays are a little bit more complex because we do have these indexes. So we've got 5 different values there. And let's say we want to update 1 and we want to update the value that's contained in there. So in order to do that, we can specify the array name, and then we have to specify it via the index. So much the same way that we're calling it down here and outputting that content, we can do it the same way. Same thing as the variable. So once we've got that value there that is contained in A0, index 0, we can work with that. And we can update it and set it to whatever value we want to set it to. So let's just do updated, and instead of B there, or maybe I can add in A and B so we can get a better idea. And I'm going to also add it in before I update it. So we'll get 2 outputs of array. So the first one there, we see that we've got updated. The second one is updated as well. So even though we've set the value there beforehand, we've gone the console log and we've updated it, it's important to remember that there is a difference in the way that JavaScript renders it out because it's already rendering it out as the updated value. And this is going to become important as we progress through the course. So also the objects here, and notice that the object here is the original value, but now after we're calling that object, we see the updated value. So there is a difference here on how things are being called and rendered out. And when we look through the object itself, so over here we have updated, but we don't have an updated here. So keeping all of this in mind, we see how these values are rendered out and treated within JavaScript. So you're probably thinking, okay, well, what happens if I want to render out the value of b? And this is where it gets even more tricky, because before I'm updating it, if I call the value of b SCC1, then we're actually going to see that value rendered out there, so as 2. So as it is displayed here, but then it gets updated later on and gets displayed as the updated value. So over here we have SCC1 is updated when we output in the console. And also looking into our values here that are being returned back from the console, we see that within the object we have all of the items there that we've listed, but when we open up the array, we've got another one here that sits at length. And this is also something that we can utilize, because this is a value that's sitting within our script. So if I want to know the length of the amount of items within the array, I've got all of these default properties such as length. So now if I console log this out, we see that the length of the array is 5. And this is very useful. It's very useful to understand that this is within our, this is really easily accessible within our JavaScript. We're able to easily add and get the length value. And when we look at looping through all of the values within the array, it makes it really easy because we have this property that's accessible within our JavaScript. And also I wanted to show you one other thing I did want to cover off is how we can add to the array. So we saw that within our object it was relatively easy. We could create brand new values here and assign values to them, value properties, name properties, and assign values to them. So it was really easy to work with objects and add in additional values in there. But with the arrays it gets a little bit more complicated. And the way that we do that is we use different built-in methods that are available within the array. And in order to add items into our array, we need to specify and use these methods. So the one to add it in is push, and basically it mutates an array appending the given elements and returning the new length of the array. So basically what that means is that all we're doing is we're giving the ability to add a brand new item into the array. And this is again with these, because it's a method, we're using these rounded brackets, so not the square ones that we use to create the array. And we have to add our value as we do here with the quotes. So I'm going to use double quotes this time. Usually it's better to keep it standard, but I just want to give some different sampling of just different ways of adding in content. So push array and last item. So now we have one last item added into the array. We're going to see that our array now contains 6 items, so that value has increased. The length automatically increases as I add in new items. And in the next lesson, we're going to look at some other methods that are available within arrays, just different ways of working and sorting the different items that are contained within the arrays. But it's important to understand that differences between arrays and objects. So arrays have numbered indexes. So we see that over here where we're returning them via numbers, and objects have named indexes. So these are the name. So this is just essentially the biggest difference between these, and they're both able to contain multiple values within that one variable as we've created it.